Yes.
Wonderful. All right.
Cool.
So
Okay, great.
let me see if I can find the chat again. Um, so I first just want to say I'm incredibly humbled to get to speak with your chapter. I think the Native Plant Society is an incredible group of people, and your programs, your seed banks, it's such wonderful work, and it brings a ton of positivity to our community. And for those of you who don't know, I lived in San Marcos for 19 years, and when I took this role as the executive director of Comal Conservation, my wife and I moved to Comal County for the first time. And the very first thing we did in our home was plant a garden together. We planted a native garden, and she loves gardening. And your signage at all of the various places where people sell plants was extremely helpful. And so anyway, I just want to tell you how grateful I am for your work. I also want to throw in the chat an opportunity for you guys to shout out topics and things that you want me to chat about. I don't want to miss any of your questions. I think it's super easy to cancel a meeting when you got snow on the ground in Texas. We just don't know how to deal with that kind of stuff. And so I'm grateful that you didn't do that. And since we have this intimate setting, I just want to feel free to throw anything in there that you guys have questions about, whether it's regarding conservation efforts in Comal County or our organization or partnership opportunities, all that good stuff. And I'll answer them as I see them. All right, I'm going to see if I can go ahead and start the presentation. Hopefully I can. We'll see. There we go. All right, so you guys can kind of see this. Just my title slide. For those of you who don't know, our mission at Comal Conservation is working to preserve land, water, and wildlife here in Comal County. And this organization was started in 2018 on the heels of a Preparing for Growth conference. And the people that created, at the time, Comal County Conservation Alliance saw a great need for conservation work here in Comal County. And I'm extremely grateful for all of those people, many of whom are probably on this call. For thinking ahead and saying, we need a conservation organization in Comal County. It's incredibly important, and it's starting to have tangible results here in the county. So a little bit about myself. This is a picture of me in the West Cave Grotto. I don't know how many of y'all have been to West Cave Preserve over there off Hamilton Pool Road. It's an incredible place where you can find a ton of native plants that aren't found everywhere. So rare native plants, which are really cool. And it had a huge influence on my career. So I always kind of start off with this quote from John Muir that basically talks about how nature is a part of our lives. And every time we go and engage with the outdoors, we end up getting more than we ever bargained for. So again, all in about 3 months, my life completely changed. I got a call from Elizabeth Bowerman. Many of you probably know her. And in 3 months, I took a new job. I married the love of my life, Katie, and I bought my first home. And so it was a giant whirlwind of change for me. And these are just pictures of my life. So there's a picture of me mean mugging as a kid up in North Texas, a picture of my dog, Butters, my wife, Katie, and the Hershey Ranch, where I got engaged to her. And so for those of you that don't know where the Hershey Ranch is, it's in Stonewall, Texas, in Gillespie County, out there near Fredericksburg. And I work out there regularly. I help my longtime mentor, Andy Sansom, manage the property, and I work the hunting program out there. So I teach kids how to go hunting for the first time. So my career has been all over the place, but I started working in conservation and in the outdoors right around 2009. And, I just graduated college, and the housing crisis was there. And I decided, well, I need to go back and get a master's degree and wait this thing out. And while I did that, I took all kinds of incredible internship opportunities and work opportunities where I was really focused on environmental education. And so I started off as a glass bottom boat driver. I don't know how many of y'all have been out to see the glass bottom boats at Spring Lake. It's an incredible area. I know everybody on the call is really into native plants. I don't know how many of you are into aquatic plants, but they have a phenomenal story of habitat restoration, where when they, obviously they bought the lake in 1998, and they were restoring the aquatic plants there. They had about 95% hydrilla, which is, of course, an Asian invasive plant that had just spread everywhere. They got that down with the help of volunteers to less than 1%, and have actively managed that lake ever since. And so it's an incredible story of plant restoration. I thought y'all might find that kind of cool. This is a picture of me teaching some middle school kids at Jacob's Well in Wimberley. And it's kind of a crazy story, but as I was talking to all these children, a bass jumped right out and totally breached the water and scared everybody, which was kind of fun. So another big part of my life, I worked for Texas Parks and Wildlife for 4 years. I was a park ranger too, with the Texas Outdoor Family Program. I worked in 73 different state parks, teaching people how to go camping. And I was a wildland firefighter and a wilderness first responder. But my primary goal was serving as like the first liaison that somebody sees at a state park. All of these kids in particular are junior rangers who've never been camping before, and their parents weren't really sure how to get them outside. And so my goal, my job was to make it easier for them. And so I would travel around the state, teaching families how to go camping. And there's a wonderful video, Parks and Wildlife video called Tent Revival. If you're interested in learning more about the disconnect that children currently have with nature, you can go to the Parks and Wildlife YouTube channel and look that up. It's a really wonderful story. And it was just one of the coolest jobs I've ever had. I was camping 39 weekends a year, seeing, almost every state park in the state. There are 88 state parks, and I went to 73 of them. So it was just an amazing experience for me. I mentioned working at West Cave Outdoor Discovery Center. I was the director for the Children in Nature Collaborative of Austin. So I was partnering with multiple organizations to fan the flames of a regional movement to reconnect children with the outdoors. And I can't see anybody's faces, but I'm wondering how many of you have been to this incredible place. You can see some maidenhair fern there, and it's just an incredible spot. If you have not yet been to West Cave Preserve, I encourage you to go. It's in Hays County. If you take Ranch Road 12 all the way up to Hamilton Pool Road and take a left, take a left, you can get there. And you go down into this grotto, and the ecosystem completely changes from what's on the uplands. And so it's just a really wonderful place to learn about native plants, and you can see a ton of really cool stuff. One of the neatest things about West Cave as it relates to plants is that they have these speleothems that have biomass on them, kind of like moss. And at the edge of the grotto, you can actually see how photosynthesis has drawn the calcite towards the sun over the decades and centuries as those speleothems are being created, as that calcite's getting deposited. And so just an amazing place where you can learn a lot about what pristine nature in the Texas Hill Country looks like. I got to do some other really cool projects while I worked there. I bought that bus, the Roadrunner Outdoor Adventure Bus, connecting over 12,000 kids with low price field trip opportunities to connect with nature, and created this other program called Girls Outside, which is still running. It's a wonderful program that connects young girls with high school teenagers, and they go out on a series of field trips and learn about the outdoors. I also do this in my spare time. I'm a volunteer with the Texas Youth Hunting Program. So I've been doing this for about 8 years, where I take kids who've never been hunting before in their lives, and we teach them how to do it well. We teach them how to be safe, legal, and ethical hunters. My last youth hunt that I did, I had 6 girls out there with me and our team, and it got down to 12 degrees, and we were all camping, and but we crushed it. Everybody had a great time, absolutely no complaints. And so it's just a special part of my life that I figured I'd share with y'all. In addition to all of those things, I worked at the Meadow Center for Water and the Environment as their chief fundraiser. And now I work at Comal Conservation as the executive director, the first full-time staff member for that organization. And so this is a list of some of the things that we do, some of the things that we work on. So obviously working on public policy, working on education and outreach, and working with landowners to support them and their objectives. One of the things I tell every group I ever talk to is that we're a collaborative nonprofit, not a combative one. You'll never see Comal Conservation at a protest. We're not in that type of conservation work, and what we try to do is find low-hanging fruit where we can work together and come up with common sense solutions to some of these really complex environmental issues. Um, we're seeing a shift in people's perspective. Drought has a tendency to do that. When you drive by the lake and you see it's so low every single day, people start to ask you, well, are we going to run out of water? And and that's not just anybody. That's your local officials. People are wondering what's going to happen, and so those conversations are taking place, and unfortunately, that is one of the benefits of being in a drought is that people start asking questions with sincerity and want to learn more about the natural systems that sustain our communities. So we work with the commissioner's court, we work with city councils, we work with utility companies and groundwater conservation districts. We work with our river authority here in Comal County. And we've been doing these things called county to county workshops where multiple groups of county commissioners come together and talk about the codes, the subdivision regulations that they have, the authority that they think they have, the issues they're facing, and the policies that they're adopting in order to manage this incredible population growth that's happening in Comal County and across the Hill Country. Something else that we're working hand in hand with the Texas Water Company on is the water availability report. Some of you may have not heard about that, but every 3 years, the water companies, level 7 water providers, are required to submit what's called a water availability report. And that report kind of highlights their system, what they think is going to happen in terms of population growth, how they think that population growth will turn into connections and demand for their system, and where they source their water from and how those sources are holding up. So every 3 years, they make one of those documents, and we're working with the Texas Water Company, which is what services most of Western Comal County. We're working with them on their next water availability report, which is really special and very cool. Um, we also host community programs every other month, and this slide has an old date on it, but we're going to have our next one on March 11th, and it's going to feature Sarah Coles. She is the statewide director for the Texas Children in Nature Network, and she's going to come out and talk to us a little bit about the disconnect that children currently have with the outdoors, what some of their efforts are, and how we might partner with them in the future to bring some of those programs to Comal County. We also produce a monthly newsletter. Hopefully you guys get some of that. That's a Conservation Insider. You can go to our website at comalconservation.org and you can sign up for that. It's absolutely free and you can keep up with what we're doing. We also work on all these outreach events. We were in the Comal County Fair Parade this last year. It was my first time in the fair parade. It was amazing. We've got a lot of outreach events on the calendar for 2025. So all kinds of good things on that front. I always like to throw photos into these presentations just to remind us of what this is, what this landscape is like and what we're working on and why we care so much. This is a photo by Jordan Moore. He is an artist that we have contracted with to capture the beauty of Comal County and to highlight to everyone why this work matters so much. Beautiful picture of a sunset. This is another sunset. You guys might know where this is over there by the Brookshires, Canyon Lake. Of course, Guadalupe River, Long River Road. This looks like something you would see out of National Geographic, but this is actually Canyon Lake, which is pretty incredible. And I put all the wildlife photos together because I just think, it's amazing. The abundance of wildlife that we have in Comal County is absolutely incredible. Most folks don't realize that we have the largest mammalian colony of any animal on Earth right here in Comal County. And the mammalian emergence happens, of course, at Bracken Cave, protected by Bat Conservation International. It should be a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and hopefully one day it will be named that. But the wildlife in Comal County is just absolutely incredible. So before I get into the next phase of my talk, I'm going to go through the chat and just make sure I'm not missing anything. San Marcos River Rangers, man, I love the San Marcos River Rangers. Marion, thank you for doing that. You know, it's interesting. I was part of the Texas Stream Team, and I forget what they called it before the Texas Stream Team, but I was a part of that too. For those of you that don't know what that is, it's a program where you can test water quality up and down the various waterways in Texas, and mainly the 303D list, which is the naughty list for rivers and streams in the state, the ones that have various amounts of pollution in them. When I was an undergraduate, I got trained, and then I became a trainer, and I got to test for E. coli and conductivity and pH and temperature and all that cool stuff. And so it's just a great program. I encourage all of y'all to think about it. We need more water quality monitors out here in Comal County, especially as development continues to grow. We see more and more wastewater permits going in. And so naturally, we need folks who have that skill set and are willing to go out there and test the water. So again, feel free to throw things in the chat and I will get to them as I can. This map was developed by a good friend of mine. His name's Jonathan Ogren, and the Siglo group created this model. And what they did is they looked at basically density of development at the time and what those trends were like. And they projected out. They did a regression to basically allow them to see what if conditions stayed the same from 2007. How would that go moving forward? This is the current condition map, and this is the let's see if I can get to it. There you go. That is the 2050 model. So this is what development looks today, and this is what it looks like in 50 years from when the model was developed. And so as you can see, Comal County is not immune to this development at all. Currently, you can see a good amount of green, a decent amount of Edwards Aquifer recharge zone, a lot of development out towards the lake, but there's kind of this break between New Braunfels and the rest of Comal County and Bulverde. And as you go into 2050, what you see here is that almost all of the county is developed in some way, shape, or form by 2050. It's definitely, the population trends are the type of trends we've never seen before in the county. And so it's putting a tremendous strain on the natural systems that sustain our communities that are currently built here. And it's definitely making us rethink the way we approach development and the way we regulate development. So as a community, we're thinking like we've never thought before, largely because we've never faced anything like this before. So one of the things I wanted to talk about with y'all today was really water, because I was told that you guys are really interested in water and that you think you want to learn more about that, and that's pretty interesting. So this is a map of aquifers in the state of Texas, the major ones. There are lots of minor aquifers that aren't on this list, and that's because the list would be so colorful, it'd be hard to read if we put them all in there. But the major aquifers that impact Comal County are two, really. It's the Edwards Aquifer and the Trinity Aquifer. And the Trinity Aquifer has three major units: the upper, the middle, and the lower. And these two aquifers couldn't be more different from each other. They're very different. The Edwards Aquifer recharges in a matter of weeks, and the Trinity Aquifer takes years to recharge. And Western Comal County is very different from Eastern Comal County, and it's a lot drier. You have a different Köppen classification system for the climate out in Western Comal County. You have a semi-arid climate, and you have a semi-humid climate near New Braunfels. And so that's reflected in the distribution of water. Some groundwater resources that if you're looking for more information on those two aquifers, I would encourage you to reach out to the EAA and the Comal Trinity Groundwater Conservation District. They're the governmental entities responsible for the protection of these natural systems. So they have information on that. These aquifer conditions are old. They've gone down. We've seen a decrease in our aquifers across the board since the last time this slide was updated. And I'll do my best to try and update that slide and send it out over to Sarah when this talk is over, so you guys can all have the newest aquifer conditions. But you can also find them on the Herald Zeitung. And if you go to these websites, they'll have active readings. So the basic cross section of the Edwards Aquifer goes as so. It's divided into three parts. There's a contributing zone, a recharge zone, and an artesian zone. Most of Comal County is in the contributing zone of the Edwards Aquifer. There is a small sliver of Comal County that is in the recharge zone, and then there is a small sliver that is the artesian zone, and then it flows out of the aquifer across the surface of the earth towards Guadalupe County, flows essentially west to east. And so you can see that, there's a tremendous amount of pressure. The water on top forces the water below it forward. And that's what creates the bubbling springs along the I-35 corridor, whether it's Barton Springs or San Marcos Springs or Comal Springs or San Antonio Springs. That, what we refer to as hydraulic head, pushes the water up out of the ground under its own force. What happens is, as we pump more water out of the aquifer and as we receive less rain, the force that's pushing down on that water decreases. And I also like to use the analogy of a 5-gallon bucket. Not all of the spring openings are at the same level in the bucket. And so the Comal Springs are significantly higher in the bucket than the San Marcos Springs. And so as that water goes past the hole in the bucket, it runs out and goes dry. And we've seen the Comal Springs go dry several times, even since I moved here. And we've never seen the San Marcos Springs run dry. However, nothing's impossible. We keep growing the way we're growing. We receive less and less rain. These systems have a maximum bench. And so that's something I like to stress with all of our public officials. It's a lot like a checking account. You can only withdraw so much money before the bank says, hey, hold up, we got to stop this. And so the aquifers are in a similar situation, except some of the aquifers take a lot longer to recharge. So, all right, I've got a question from Marion. Can you please address the best ways to express our concerns about the aquifer water quality? Would that be to the entities you mentioned, or to the Texas Water Quality Board, or our state representatives? I'm going to say all the above. I mean, I will tell you, I think a lot of people want to go to the county commissioners first because they recognize that county commissioners essentially approve plats according to their subdivision regulations. And they're like, well, hey, maybe you guys can just stop development. And the truth is, it's not that simple. County government has a lot less authority than municipal government, and most of our county is in the county. And so I would say if you're worried about aquifer issues, the Comal Trinity Groundwater Conservation District is a good place to start. GMA 9 is currently also creating their desired future conditions, and they're in their planning process. So GMA 9 is a conglomeration of these groundwater conservation districts. It's one level above. And what they're going to do is create their desired future conditions, and they're going to send it to the Texas Water Development Board for the state water plan. So I would say reach out to your representatives always. They need to hear from you. And I always encourage people to be kind when they do this. Everybody thinks, well, if I'm just, forceful, they'll listen to me. And that's not always true. Sometimes your representative will say, hey, they're one person. I don't need to deal with them. So I always encourage folks to, address your public servants with kindness and understanding. Seek to understand where they're at, what their objectives are, and what your concerns are. And maybe there's some, overlap there. I'd also encourage you to reach out to the GCD here, and we can definitely provide some more information on where to, get a hold of them. Larry is the president's name. He's a good guy. I encourage you to reach out to him and to the rest of the board members as you're able. So we'll work on getting the information of exactly who you can reach out to and send it to Sarah when this is all wrapped up. But thank you for asking that question, Marion. All right, so we're going to go forward, hopefully, in the thing. There we go. All right. So this is a really cool map that Comal County Conservation Alliance and the Great Springs Project put together, and it basically shows protected lands in the uh, basically the hill country area. The hill country has many definitions. Some people claim are over 22 counties in the hill country. Right here, what we're really looking at is the Edwards Aquifer, and so you can see. Hopefully, y'all can look and see my mouse. This is what is commonly known as the Balcones Escarpment, which is the creation of the artisanal zone. This is where most of the water of the aquifer comes out. Um, then you've got the recharge zone behind it. You can see that part of Comal County is in the recharge zone, and then a good portion of Comal County is in the contributing zone or the drainage zone. And so um, one of these counties doesn't look like the rest. You can see up here in Travis County, we've got a ton of green shape files, and these are parks that they have invested in. Hayes County is beginning to do the same. Whether it's in land trust, that's the yellow, these are conservation easements, or it's actually private conservation or federal or county, governmental conservation park acquisition, that kind of thing. Down here in Bear County, you can also see that they have done a good amount of land conservation. They actually use a portion of their sales tax to purchase or conserve these properties. And that's because San Antonio relies exclusively on the Edwards Aquifer for its drinking water. And so as a community, they've decided, well, hey, we need to invest in the protection of both the contributing and the recharge zones of the aquifer. And even out here in areas that don't necessarily benefit directly from the artisanal zone of the aquifer, they're still protecting parcels out here because they know that the aquifers like the Trinity and the Edwards, they mingle, and a lot of what's called the drainage or contributing zone of the Edwards is actually part of the Trinity aquifer too. And so there's good reason to put conservation easements and parks in all facets of the Edwards aquifer system. And so one of the things I encourage folks who talk about conservation work is that here in Comal County, we really need to invest in parks, open space, and natural areas. We have a limited amount of time before more people move here, and arguably a 25-hour or 25-year window in terms of acquiring parks before it's simply too expensive to acquire certain types of parks. When I worked in Austin, it was almost impossible to buy new parkland, and that's because land was so outrageously expensive that it couldn't be used for a park. And so the biggest park project we had is when we opened up schools. We had 33 schools that were co-owned by the Parks Department, and that effectively created 33 new parks for Austin, which was a huge win for the community. But unlike Austin, we have a chance to get ahead of this and to put some parks on the ground to help landowners put their private working lands into conservation and to support these natural systems. So another thing that I like to mention is the flow path of the aquifer. Not everybody realizes this, but the flow path actually directs towards Hayes and the San Marcos Springs. There's a little bit of a wall in the aquifer system between the Barton Springs area and the San Marcos Springs area, but the conservation work that we do in Comal County will directly benefit us and our neighbors. So it goes beyond our county border. And it's pretty cool that it does that. You can see a general, west to east trajectory. This is a daunting map. This was the number of new wells drilled in Comal County since 2000. And this came from the Texas Water Development Board water well database. It's astounding the number of water wells that are being drilled every single day in Comal County. And many of them are completely unmonitored and unregulated. And that's because they're private wells. In our groundwater work with the Comal Trinity Groundwater Conservation District, they focused almost exclusively on industrial and agricultural wells. and they've had this massive category called exempt wells, which are private personal wells. So not every well produces thousands of acre feet out of the aquifer, like some of the supply wells for the Texas Water Company do, but they all have an impact, and they all create cones of depression, and they do have the ability to make their neighbor's well go dry, especially in drought conditions. So some pretty heavy stuff. The last couple of slides talking about growth and talking about the stressors that are happening to the aquifer. I always like to talk about the good things that are happening in Comal County, because so often we forget to talk about them and talk about all the things that aren't happening. I want to just mention briefly Nancy Pappas and her crew over at the headwaters of the Comal. They're doing astounding work protecting the headwaters of the Comal River. And restoring that landscape. I don't know how many of you have gotten to go out there and see the work that their team has been doing, but the native plants out there are really cool. The grasses they've put in place are great. They have a beaver that is actually kind of chopping down some of their trees, which is not wonderful, but hey, I mean, that's nature. That's how it goes. So anyway, if you haven't had a chance to go there, you really should, and check it out and support them. Wonderful group. Another thing that we do at Comal Conservation is we focus on public policy. So you probably heard of the Parks, Open Space, and Natural Area Master Plan. I put a QR code here. You can scan that with your phone, and it'll take you to the document. It was an incredible plan that took a lot of ingenuity and time and focus, and it almost didn't get passed. There was a group of citizens that were concerned about the plan. And I got a call. That said, oh, the plan might not make it. It might get killed. You need to come out. You need to show up. And so Comal Conservation rallied, and we went to the courthouse. We had over 40 people speak during the public comment period, all kind, thoughtful comments, and it narrowly passed. And I'm very proud of that. It may just be a plan, but it's a first step and a right step for Comal County. And so I'm grateful for everybody who came out, and I'm grateful for the commissioners that voted for it, and for the people that supported it. It was a really wonderful day. That was in April of 2024. Some other things that we've helped work on is the Comal County Strategic Plan. That document will get posted to the Comal County website soon. One of the coolest parts of that plan is the public comment that highlighted the value that our residents place on natural systems, park access, and connectivity with nature. Resounding support for public lands in Comal County. We've had our toe in the water of the Regional Habitat Conservation Plan of late. We've been working with the county on park acquisition and habitat restoration, and we also engage in municipal efforts. I've walked parcels with mayors who ended up purchasing new parkland on those walks. And so, yeah, we try to engage in collaborative public policy making that supports, the conservation of our natural systems. Some other cool things that have happened recently, we've had a few really big conservation wins. So in 2024, Honey Creek Ranch went into conservation. This is a 600-acre ranch out there by Guadalupe River State Park. It has on its property the longest cave in the state of Texas, Honey Creek Cave, and it is the headwaters of Honey Creek, which is an incredible natural ecosystem that flows into the upper Guadalupe River, and it's absolutely beautiful. These two sisters are the ones who did it. We have Joyce and Cindy, and their whole family was there. We recognized them with the Jency Madden Conservation Award. And so that was just wonderful. Another side story is that Joyce, the one on the left, is actually a biologist for Texas Parks and Wildlife. So in her professional life, she's out there saving the environment as well. Another really cool conservation easement just closed, John Knox Ranch, 300 acres, 200 of which are in Comal County. The Comal Land Conservation Fund, which we we operate on behalf of our donors, supported this conservation easement financially. And it's just really cool that this particular faith camp will never be developed. And you can see they have this beautiful grotto where the kids swim, and it's an incredible space. And so we're grateful that that riparian woodland and all of those wonderful natural resources will be protected forever. That's super special. Some other things we do, we have our outreach event, mentioned that. We've got our outreach crew spreading the good word about Mother Rock and the karstic aquifers. And, we go to various farmers markets, and we go, to all kinds of different meetings. We're in the parade this last go around. It was super fun and first time for us, so we were proud of that. We do community education. I mentioned it during our last couple slides back, that we were going to have our next one on March 11th. So March 11th is right around the corner. And again, that's Sarah Coles. I want to encourage all of you to come out for that. Should be a really cool presentation. Typically, we get between 50, 100 people there, and we have a great time. Lastly, I want to mention the Keep It Country Music Jam. We had our very first ever fundraiser. Big, successful fundraiser. We were able to raise around $31,000 in net profit for the cause. We gathered people together. We celebrated conservation heroes. We listened to some great local music. And so, when I first came to this county, I met with Mayor Rusty Brockman, and he looked at me. He said, "Ryan, please, whatever you do, don't host another gala. Don't do it. And host something different." And so this is what we came up with, and I'm very proud that we were able to do that. And then this is my final slide. My POPL information is there. If you want my cell phone, my email, all that good stuff, feel free to use that QR code. I also threw on some cool plants that you may notice or be familiar with these plants, but we rebranded ourselves recently. We went from Comal County Conservation Alliance to just Comal Conservation, and we've got these cool critters that represent the local flora and fauna, and they change out every time you see it. We use a different one. And so it's kind of neat that, as people look at our logo, they're learning about the natural resources of our community. So that being said, I'll open it up for questions. I didn't see anything else in the chat, but again, I'm just extraordinarily grateful for the opportunity to speak with y'all and to get to be here. You guys are amazing, and I hope we can find new ways to partner in the future. So
I'll kick that off. I moved here from Austin, and I was familiar somewhat through the Austin Parks Foundation with the joint owned school park property.
yep.
How could something like that get going in Comal County? Because we definitely don't have, particularly in the western part of we don't have very many parks or playgrounds, and it would be great to open that up to families outside of school hours.
That's a great question, Sarah. So this last year, we spent a lot of time at Comal Conservation focused internally. We developed our first 3-year strategic plan that's very comprehensive, and it actually encourages us to reach out to the school districts in Comal County and to talk to them about this exact thing that you're talking about. And we just recently met with several partners and created the Texas Hill Country, what's it called? The Texas Children in Nature Network Hill Country. There was one for San Antonio, and there was one for Austin, and now we have one for us. We have one for the counties that aren't really represented by those municipal efforts. And so, what was really unique about the situation in Austin, and it's a quick story. The parks director of Austin and the superintendent for Austin Independent School District hadn't met in 7 years when I took that job, and it was blindingly obvious that they should try to work together in some form or fashion. And what was amazing was during the Depression, when they were expanding schools in Austin, the Parks Department had funds for whatever reason, and the school district didn't, and so they were able to buy the land and then rent those parcels out to the school district that then, signed 100-year leases and built buildings and all that good stuff. And so that was how we were able to kind of circumnavigate, because of the co-ownership agreements that were written by the Parks Department in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. And, I don't know if that exists in Comal County. It probably doesn't. But I would think that our education folks would be all about this. This is one of those things that's pretty common sense. Connecting kids with nature is beneficial for them in the immediate, and they fall in love with it. They fall in love with nature, and they become the next generation of environmental stewards. And so there's a lot of alignment there, and I think the needle will move on that front. So,
Well, we're at least able to point to the success of the Austin project and that
right.
it's benefited the community. So even though maybe the Parks Department doesn't own all the land, they can still see that there's positive benefits all around for doing something of the nature.
I agree. One thing we should definitely be talking about are the plants on the ground at these schools. So one thing that we noticed, especially in Austin, was that every time a new school would get built, they scrape the site. They take down every tree and every plant, and so they can build easier. And that I think has happened with several of our schools here in Comal County. And so going out there and doing some assessments of these elementary schools in particular, and making sure that they have shade and making sure that they've got native plants in their gardens, making sure they have an opportunity to learn from those gardens. There's a really wonderful program called PEAS, which is Partners in Education Agricultural Sustainability. It was created in Austin, and they work specifically on school gardens. And so I could see something like that becoming a partnership between NIPSOT and Comal Conservation. I think that could be really cool.
Well, don't forget that for those smaller school nurseries, we do have our annual grant program, Bring Back the Monarchs to Texas, where they can apply for up to $600. And we definitely encourage schools, churches, nonprofits, public
Heck yeah.
places to apply for those funds. The next grant cycle is actually applications are due on February 1st.
Okay.
So it's coming up quick, but native nectar plants and native milkweeds are what it will fund. And
That's very cool. Very
yeah,
cool.
so
I
help
wrote
spread the
down
word
it's
on that.
absolutely. We'll put that in our Conservation Insider. If you've got a write up on that, we'll send it out to all of our
There, if you're following
people.
the State Society, they have a social media post that has all of the details.
Yep.
I'm not sure if we've shared it lately. Our social media has been a little bit in flux lately. Um,
I know how that goes.
So yes, for everyone here, our chapter has a brand new Facebook page. I encourage y'all to go check it out. I believe there was a link to it in the newsletter you got recently. If not, it'll be in the upcoming communications. But do check that out. We've got a brand new Facebook coordinator, Nancy DeMarco, who has access and is getting everything sorted out for us on that front. Anyway.
Wonderful.
It was in the newsletter.
Okay.
There's a question in the chat, Ryan.
Let's see. There's been a lot of concern about the Vulcan quarry. Do you see these types of businesses as an issue for our water quality? Yes, absolutely, I do. They use a lot of water, and they have to file WEPAP for a reason. So for those of you that don't know what a WEPAP is, that's a watershed pollution abatement plan they submit to TCEQ. And the aggregate industry was largely deregulated in 2005. And so we're kind of seeing the results of that deregulation here in Comal County. Williamson County actually has more quarries than we do, even though it seems like we have more. The Vulcan Quarry definitely will have issues with water quality and with the use of water in the area. You'll see large cones of depression as it relates to their water wells and the rock crusher. It's interesting. I read the WEPAP for the recent Heidelberg expansion. I don't know how many of you knew that was happening out there by Schoenthal Road, and they found 48 karst features on the site, and their solution for solving watershed pollution was to fill those karst features with concrete, and that was what they submitted to the TCEQ as their WEPAP. So, absolutely, yeah, they definitely bring forward a lot of pollution, and they use a lot of water. And I think, the state of Texas is going to have to grapple with water use. We've seen people we've never seen before come out in favor of water conservation. Sid Miller the other day had a very large media push on the fact that Texas is out of water. And I don't know if the alarmist message is the right one, but we definitely need to be thinking about where our water goes and how it's used. And what uses make sense in certain regions. So, and I appreciate the comment, Nancy. Thank you. I hope the presentation was informative. You know, whenever you present to a group of incredible naturalists like y'all, you're always worried that you're going to mess up and say something's native when it's not native. So you do a lot of like plant checks. One of my favorite things when I was a park ranger, I loved plants because they didn't move like birds, and I could take a good look and actually see what they were like. And so some of my favorite plants, I think my favorite plant today has to be frostweed, simply because of the snow. That's probably a good one. But I guess my favorite plant in Texas is the chili pecan. That's my favorite plant because it's really spicy and awesome. I like prickly pear, tetehio, and I like little blue stem. I think it's a beautiful grass. So lots of good plants in the Texas Hill Country. Awesome. Well, wonderful stuff.
Thank you so much. Great presentation.
Y'all are phenomenal. I hope I get to meet y'all in person at some point. I'd love to come to one of your meetings and just hang out and be a fly on the wall.